Association to open this forum of Atom Expo 2015. We will have a long row of very strong managers, experts in the nuclear sector this morning. And you will see that I will be very tough on discipline here. But the first speaker is Mr. Kirienka of Rosatom State Corporation. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Kirienka.
Уважаемая госпожа ведущая, уважаемые коллеги, дорогие друзья, разрешите мне сказать несколько вступительных приветственных слов перед началом нашей дискуссии. Я рад приветствовать всех наших почетных гостей на 7-м форуме Atom Expo. Как мы уже говорили на открытии, этот форум проходит в знаменательный год для российской атомной отрасли. В этом году мы празднуем 70-летие со дня образования российской атомной отрасли. Ну и, конечно, для нас 70 лет это очень много. В эти годы вместилось многое. С другой стороны, если сравнивать атомную отрасль с другими отраслями, 70 лет это достаточно мало, это достаточно юная отрасль, но за эти годы прошли кардинальные изменения, создание принципиально новых технологий и масштаб влияния мировой атомной энергетики на всю экономику мира, на развитие современного образа жизни человека трудно переоценить. За эти 60-70 лет, 60 лет назад была пущена первая атомная станция в Обнинске, за эти 60-70 лет атомная энергетика переживала и стремительные взлеты, переживала кризисы и остановки в своем развитии, но всегда развитие возобновлялось. Так происходит и сейчас. Сегодня можно твердо говорить о том, что мировая атомная энергетика восстановилась после трагических событий на Фукусиме. Объем заказов сравнялся, а по некоторым направлениям даже превосходит дофукусимский уровень. Но, наверное, неправильно будет говорить, что она просто вернулась в то состояние, в котором находилась до 2011 года. Конечно, нет. Атомная энергетика развивается, изменяется. И сегодня это новый рынок, новая ситуация и новые возможности. Во-первых, очевидно, что в очередной раз усилился акцент на вопрос обеспечения безопасности. Да, атомная энергетика – это отрасль бизнеса, поэтому очевидное стремление любого заказчика и любого подрядчика обеспечить экономию денежных средств, но для всех нас в очередной раз очень важный аргумент и вывод о абсолютном приоритете безопасности. Никакое стремление сэкономить средства, обеспечить повышение конкурентоспособности за счет использования устаревших технологий, за счет отказа от обязательного требования референтности и возможности потрогать руками проверенность и надежность технологий недопустимо. Этот вывод сегодня очевиден и является приоритетным для развития мировой атомной энергетики. Второе изменение – это очевидное удлинение жизненных циклов в атомной энергетике. Появляются новые материалы и новые стали. Мы говорили о том, что в России завершилось испытание стали для корпусов реактора, которые гарантируют работоспособность в нейтронном потоке более 100 лет. Продляются действующие энергоблоки, появляются новые технологические решения, и жизненный цикл любого объекта атомной отрасли увеличивается в разы. Третье изменение – это изменение географии развития атомной энергетики. Сегодня, очевидно, центр развития мировой атомной энергетики смещается из наиболее развитых стран Европы и Америки в сторону развивающихся стран, Юго-Восточную Азию, Латинскую Америку, все большее количество африканских стран и стран Ближнего Востока делает выбор в пользу развития атомной энергетики. Четвертое изменение – это появление такого общепризнанного конечного продукта в атомной энергетике. Я помню, что год назад здесь, в этом зале, на форуме Атомэкспо-2014, мы со многими экспертами только прогнозировали это и говорили, что высоко вероятно, что в атомной энергетике все тоже придет к конечному продукту, которым является киловатт-час произведенной электроэнергии. Даже не киловатт установленной мощности, а киловатт-час. Жизнь за этот год показала, что это по факту свершилось. Сегодня не только контракты БОО, связанные с инвестициями, но и даже EPC-контракты заказчики обсуждают через стоимость киловатт-часа произведенной электроэнергии, а это включает в предмет переговоров и предмет сотрудничества гораздо большее количество аспектов. Не только стоимость оборудования, проектные решения, инфраструктура, но и стоимость обслуживания, ремонтопригодность, поставки топлива, технологии вывода из эксплуатации и хранения отходов. Все становится не просто отложенными вопросами завтрашнего дня, все становится предметом сегодняшних коммерческих переговоров. Пятое отличие – это расширение запроса и требований заказчиков, которые становятся на путь развития атомной энергетики. И сегодня практически любой заказчик, страна или крупная корпорация ставит вопрос о том, что они не только хотят получить сооруженную атомную станцию, дешевый и надежный киловатт-час произведенной электроэнергии, поставки топлива. Это все безусловное требование. Но кроме этого, страны, которые становятся на путь развития атомной энергетики, хотят получить в качестве приобретения не только дешевый и долгосрочный надежный киловатт электроэнергии. Они хотят получить новые квалифицированные рабочие места, налоговые доходы в свой бюджет. Они хотят получить новое качество системы образования в стране, принципиально новое развитие технологий, совершенствование законодательства, развитие науки, создание атомной энергетики в стране, которая раньше этим не занималась, приводит к масштабному кумулятивному эффекту для всей экономики и технического уклада страны. Это означает, что сегодня любая страна-заказчик ставит вопросы о обеспечении такого комплексного подхода, который гарантирует им возможность получить все блага от развития атомной энергетики. И это закладывает особую ответственность стран, обладающих всей полнотой опыта. Мы говорили об этом несколько лет назад, тоже как о гипотезе, что это приведет к повышению ответственности стран-вендоров, предоставляющих технологии, которые должны свою ответственность перенести только со срока сооружения атомной станции, когда она построена, контракт закрыт, премии получены, и ответственность закончилась. Эта ответственность теперь распространяется на весь жизненный цикл, и не только атомной станции, а всей инфраструктуры атомной отрасли. Именно в такой логике мы развиваем свою работу с нашими партнерами во всех странах. Ну и то, что это востребовано, наверное, можно подтвердить тем, что с 2011 года, после событий на Фукусиме, объем зарубежных контрактов Росатома с нашими партнерами, присутствующими в этом зале, вырос более чем в 3 раза. Более чем на 80 миллиардов долларов за последние годы, и по итогам 2014 года составил 101,4 миллиарда долларов. Это только портфель контрактов, подписанных на 10 лет, более 23 блоков, и в процессе переговоров сегодня еще большее количество. Растущий спрос задает сегодня требования к обеспечению инфраструктуры, расширению мощностей. Но вот здесь как раз крайне важное требование, что если раньше для успешного развития атомной отрасли мы считали, что каждая страна, строящая атомные станции у себя и у своих партнеров, должна просто иметь такие мощности и инфраструктуру у себя на территории, сегодня этого недостаточно. Да, мы фактически восстановили машиностроительный комплекс Советского Союза, который когда-то проектировался под 10 комплектов реакторов в год. Мы даже нарастили свои мощности, уже сегодня в совокупности можем гарантировать изготовление не менее 7 комплектов длинноциклового оборудования для атомной энергетики, что превосходит нашу потребность. Но основные усилия сегодня у нас направлены на то, чтобы с нашими партнерами создать условия для локализации этого производства в странах-партнерах, чтобы создавались тысячи рабочих мест и развивалась промышленность в странах, где мы берем на себя ответственность за сооружение атомных станций. Это и образование, это и передача технологий, это и лицензирование. То же самое относится и к восстановлению компетенций и развитию компетенций инжиниринга, проектирования, инжиниринга сооружения. Мы восстановили фактически серийное сооружение атомных станций. За последние годы в России и в странах наших партнеров по российским технологиям запущено 8 новых атомных энергоблоков, больше, чем один блок в год. В этом году тоже 2 новых пуска. Нововоронежская атомная станция в России, второй блок Кудам-Кулам в Индии. Такие же 2 пуска у нас состоялись и в прошлом году. Мы восстановили серийное сооружение, что позволяет снижать издержки, обеспечивать конкурентоспособность. Но также важнейшая задача, которой мы занимаемся сегодня с партнерами, это передача технологий инжиниринга, таких как технологии уже не 3D, а мульти-D, позволяющие контролировать сооружение сложных инженерных объектов, удерживая гарантию сроков и стоимости этих объектов, с тем, чтобы максимально включить в эту работу наших партнеров в странах, с которыми мы вместе работаем. Появился совершенно новый вопрос, который не относился раньше к масштабному развитию атомной энергетики. Это обеспечение инструментов финансирования, который включает в себя весь ассортимент. Это и предоставление государственной поддержки, государственные кредиты, которые предоставляет Минфин Российской Федерации, это и средства Фонда национального благосостояния, это привлечение банковских кредитов, это выстраивание проектов совместных инвестиций, как мы действуем вместе с частными компаниями в Финляндии, или проекты БИО «Строй, владей, эксплуатируй», как это впервые реализуется в Турции. Сегодня, на наш взгляд, возрастает роль эксплуатирующих организаций, потому что крайне важно, чтобы в новых странах, развивающих атомную энергетику, был обеспечен опыт, квалификация, надежность эксплуатации, которая гарантируется только наличием соответствующих многих лет работы каждого специалиста и организации в целом. Я хотел бы здесь отметить уникальный опыт, за который мы признательны нашим коллегам, 2 крупнейших эксплуатирующих мировых организаций, французского Electricity de France и Росэнергоатома в России, когда мы работаем не только поддерживая друг друга и передавая этот опыт, но и передавая этот опыт нашим партнерам в третьих странах. Все это вместе, все эти изменения, о которых я сказал, на наш взгляд, приводят к большему взаимопроникновению. Если хотите, я использовал бы слово «взаимозависимости». И мне кажется, что это хорошо. Это очень такая правильная взаимозависимость, которая с учетом длинных циклов в атомной энергетике обеспечивает более высокую надежность, связывая нас плотными не только экономическими, технологическими, но и человеческими связями, которые гарантируют высокую надежность и стабильность. При этом такое взаимодействие и взаимозависимость возникают не только между заказчиками и подрядчиками, которые одинаково зависят друг от друга, но и между партнерами, вендорами в поставщиках технологий. Я уже приводил пример, на наш взгляд, вот такое сотрудничество, которое у нас выстроилось с атомной отраслью Франции в последние годы, в которой мы гораздо больше партнеры, чем конкуренты, потому что кроме сотрудничества с ЭДФ, у нас многолетнее сотрудничество с компанией Арива, совместное предприятие с Альстомом, совместные предприятия по производству оборудования со Schneider Electric. И это сотрудничество развивается, и мы заинтересованы в дальнейшем его расширении. Я хотел бы в завершении подчеркнуть еще и, что вот такое увеличение взаимозависимости повышает роль международных организаций. На наш взгляд, возрастает роль и значение таких международных организаций в атомной отрасли, как МАГАТЭ, Всемирная ассоциация операторов атомных станций, Всемирная ядерная ассоциация, Агентство по ядерной энергии ОЭСР. И я хочу поблагодарить руководителей этих организаций, которые приехали сегодня на наш форум, потому что их участие сегодня является важнейшим условием для стабильного и успешного развития атомной энергетики. Уважаемые коллеги, дорогие, я не могу даже сказать гости, потому что здесь нет хозяев и гостей, мы все здесь хозяева, и вместе только вместе можем обеспечить устойчивое развитие атомной энергетики, а значит обеспечение доступа любой страны в мире, любого человека, живущего в мире, к благам и возможностям, которые дает глобальное развитие атомной энергетики. Спасибо большое, желаю успехов в обсуждении на нашем форуме.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the very good introduction and the very good welcome that we got from the General Director of the Rosatom. And we are here now having a big panel and also a long row of experts. So I will soon introduce to you the strong forum we have. We are 19 people coming from 15 countries and 4 international organizations, only to take part in this plenary and say something. So it will be short answers from each one. All answers are 2 minutes, otherwise the 18 people here will not be able to talk at the end. So, we live in a world with growing ambitions. Currently, more than half the world's population does not have access to reliable electricity supplies. Globally, the population is expected to grow from the current 7 billion to around 9 billion by 2050. In combination, these billions of people of today and tomorrow will create a growing demand for electricity to be able to have a decent life, quality of life. At the same time, as the demand for electricity is rising, we also are facing environmental challenges that runs to the heart of the energy system. For more than 2 centuries, our industrial progress has been based on fossil fuels. Fossil fuels that has brought us light and heat. They have powered the advances that we have made today's modern world. But we now know that the pollution of these fossil fuels threatens the foundation of the society they support, and also they are having limited diversity of supply and puts our global political stability in jeopardy. If we are to retain a world that will allow our continued social and economic development, then we must move beyond our current fossil fuel dependence. And nuclear energy has been the basis of reliable, affordable and clean electricity supply since its start for more than 60 years ago, as Mr. Kirienka just mentioned for us. Today, it supplies more than around 11% of the world's electricity. Its combination and contribution outperforms that made by many of the emerging renewable technologies. Nuclear is clearly an important part of the solution to our future energy needs. Nuclear energy is in a period of new growth. More than 60 reactors are currently under construction around the world. The International Energy Agency projects that by 2050, and the only climate change scenario they have made, it's called the 2-degree scenario, nuclear has to become 18% of the electricity portfolio by 2050. That means it has to more than double from today. And yet, in some markets, the prospects for new nuclear generation are unclear. Ill-advised, politically motivated opposition constrains the ability to choose nuclear energy in some countries. In other markets, deregulation has created an investment environment that hampers development of the best long-term generation options, including capital-intensive projects like nuclear power. So we have a malfunctioning, deregulated market. How do we overcome these challenges and ensure that nuclear energy plays a rightful role in supporting global, regional and local social and economical development? Today I'm joined by 9 leaders from industry and government to discuss these issues. So each of the leaders here, I will say the name, and maybe if you stand up so we can, so also in the back, just stand up when I say your names. So this will go again very fast. Of course we have the General Director of Rosatom, so that's already clear. The Minister of Infrastructure and Spatial Planning of Argentina, Mr. Vido. The Chief Executive Officer of Areva, Mr. Noche. We have Chairman of WANO, Mr. Rigaldo. We have the President of JIVE, Takuyo Hattori. We have the Secretary General of the Government of Hungary, Mr. Azudi. We have the Deputy Director General of IAEA, Mr. Chudakov. We have member of the Board of Directors of Akuyu Nuclear AS, Mr. Proglio. And we have the President of Centros, Dan Poneman. And you might think this is all, and of course it's not. Of course we have the whole audience, but we have also a special row in the front. And also maybe you could quickly stand up when I introduce you. We have the Chairman of the Energy and Climate Change Committee of the Parliament of UK, Mr. Joe. We have the Chairman of the Nuclear Energy Committee of Nigeria, Mr. Faisal. We have the Director of the French Atomic and Alternative Energies Commission, Mr. Behar. And we have we have the Deputy Minister of Industry and Trade of the Czech Republic, Mr. Sok. And the Director of the OECD NEA, Mr. Cho. And the Deputy Minister of Energy of the Republic of Turkey, Mr. Yamak. The Deputy Chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission of Jordan, Mr. Arai. The Chairman of the National Nuclear Energy Agency of Indonesia, Mr. Wisnu Broto. And the Federal Union of Energy Intensive Industry, Mr. Rothermel. So now you understand why I ask everybody to only answer in 2 minutes when I give you a question. So this is really tough, but we want everybody to be able to have something to say. So the first question I will ask to everybody in the panel up here. We say that nuclear energy is an impulse for social and economic development. Please tell us from the experience of your country or your company or your organization, what other bonuses, in addition to eco-clean and affordable energy, can the customer obtain from developing the nuclear energy industry? Name one, the most important in your view. So, who is prepared to start? What about Philippe?
Okay, thank you, Agneta. Indeed, nuclear is clean, is competitive. Our duty is to make it safe first, and then, when it's safe, it does bring social and economic benefits. The first one is the stability of electricity price, which does have an influence on the stability of the social relations. That's the first benefit, it's well known. The second one is linked with a balance of trade and somehow to the mutual dependence that Mr. Kirienko referred to. It is a mean of mutual interdependence. Nuclear does not go only one way, it goes a lot of ways. That's the second benefit. But the third one, and you asked for an example, it goes to the local communities. Our plant in La Hague represents 6,000 direct jobs, 40 million of yearly taxes. That's just recurring local job, much more than any with any imported fuel. But then goes with new builds, a totally over magnitude of these aspects. A project such as Hinkley Point, second example, led by EDF, is not only 900 jobs over a 60 years lifetime of a reactor, and you would have to multiply it by the 400 reactors around the world, but it is more than 100 million pounds of economic impact every year during construction. And it is 25,000 jobs in the factories, in the engineering, in the supply chain, and on site during construction. So nuclear has a major social economic benefit where it is producing electricity. That's for my 2 minutes. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Mr. Norbert, keeping to the time. And I'd like to now start to give the same question to Mr. Rigaldo.
Thank you, Agneta. Obviously, nuclear is a clean source of energy. Sometimes we hear people opposing nuclear to renewables. I don't think we should oppose them. They can be quite complementary because both of them can ensure carbon-free and environmental friendly energies. Nuclear is mainly in competition with fossil generation and not with renewables. And another advantage, of course, of nuclear energy is that it can generate cheap and at a large scale nuclear electricity. And that's the reason why we hear about potential newcomers as Vietnam, Bangladesh, Jordan, Kenya, because it is a larger possible access to electricity for the population, and thus new chances for a better life. But of course, representing the operators and the World Association of Nuclear Operators, there is one condition for that, and this condition is nuclear safety in operation. And it is one very important condition if we want to guarantee reliability throughout the years, and if we want to guarantee a high level of acceptation by the population. So obviously it is a cheap and widely available energy at one condition, and it is our day-to-day work as nuclear operators to guarantee the highest level of nuclear safety.
Thank you very much. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Vidal, please.
Buenos días a todos y a todas, y especialmente al señor Kirienko, que si bien nos considera no huésped, pero es el anfitrión y hemos sido muy bien recibidos en Moscú, a todos los colegas del panel y por supuesto a la moderadora, a la directora general de la Asociación Nuclear Mundial, gracias. Argentina es el primer país de Latinoamérica en instalar una central nuclear en 1974. Hoy tenemos 3 centrales en funcionamiento, otra se inauguró en 1984 y la última en el año 2015, a principios de este año, quedó habilitada. Consideramos la energía nuclear una energía tecnológicamente limpia y fundamentalmente barata, accesible y centralmente generadora de un proceso de desarrollo tecnológico auténtico, genuino para los países en vías de desarrollo. Para la Argentina también la cuestión nuclear está fuertemente asociada a la medicina nuclear. Los tipos de terapias alternativas que se generan a partir de los distintos elementos y desarrollos tecnológicos que permiten atender los distintos tipos de tumores, de cáncer. Somos uno de los principales productores mundiales de molibdeno 99, el 5% del molibdeno 99 que se fabrica en el mundo se hace en la Argentina. Consideramos que una central nuclear no es solamente una fábrica de energía, sino es una madre de industrias, una de las principales industrias en la Argentina vinculadas al sector nuclear. La empresa INVAP acaba de diseñar y proyectar y poner en órbita en octubre del año pasado un satélite geoestacionario. Quiere decir que a partir del desafío que encaró el presidente Perón en el año 50 cuando crea la Comisión Nacional de Energía Atómica, desafío renovado por los presidentes Kirchner y Cristina Kirchner, la actual presidenta argentina, Argentina ha descollado en determinados niveles tecnológicos de la mano del sector nuclear. En el año 2003, cuando asumimos el gobierno, solamente el 5% de la energía eléctrica que se generaba en la Argentina provenía del sector nuclear. Hoy estamos llegando casi al 9% y, como decía quienes me antecedieron en el uso de la palabra, a un costo diferente y fundamentalmente con un resultado ecológico distinto. En el curso, para terminar, en el curso de los últimos 10 meses hemos firmado importantes convenios estratégicos con la Federación Rusa y con la República Popular China que nos llevarán a la construcción de 3 nuevas centrales por casi 2.700 megavatios más. Actualmente hay 1.700 instalados en materia nuclear en el marco de acuerdos estratégicos que firmó mi país con dichos países. El eje de absoluta multilateralidad que plantea la Argentina en su relacionamiento con el mundo. Le agradezco la posibilidad de participar. Muchas gracias.
Many thanks, Mr. Guido. And now I'd like to go to Mr. Chudakov, please.
A month ago, approximately conducted the third conference on nuclear power in Africa, where we had more than 32 countries participating. And many of them, on the level of the Ministry of Energy, Deputy Minister of Energy, showed a great interest in implementing nuclear power in their energy mix. Why they are doing and thinking about it? Because of more than 600 million people in Africa living without access to electricity at all. This is very important for them, first. Secondly, many their traditional resources is coming to the end, water resources and also coal resources, and they understand that in several decades this energy will be exhausted and also with great influence, negative influence on the environmental. And even taking into account recent diseases as Ebola in Western countries in Africa, we can see that in spite of the international assistance sending a lot of medicine and hospitals, sometimes many of these hospitals can be put in operation because of the limit of electricity access. That's why the most important, I think, for these countries, this is the independence and also independence of nuclear of energy, and this is the security of energy. And nuclear power is giving this for the future, the long sustainability and long independable nuclear power and access to electricity to many people in these countries. That's why I am conducting this year 3 INIR missions in Africa, in Nigeria, in Morocco, and in Kenya. And in each year we are conducting more and more missions in order to prepare these countries to create the necessary infrastructure in order to operate nuclear power, future nuclear power on a safe and reliable style. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chudakov. So I'd like now to invite Mr. Coglio. If you'd like to make your comment, please.
Yes, with pleasure. Was said several times along the last speeches, nuclear energy is a key driver in many aspects of the development of most of the countries. First of all, in environment and climate change effects, which is of some importance today. The second driver is competitiveness over long term and visibility of energy prices. There is no cheap energy. It's more or less an affordable energy, and clearly nuclear is part of the competitiveness of the countries that develop this kind of energy. It has a significant impact on the customers and on the development of industrial companies in each and every country. The third driver is industrial development and jobs creation, in particular high-level jobs. In such countries as France, for instance, direct impact of nuclear in jobs creation is about 250,000 jobs dedicated to the industry, the specific nuclear industry, and related to in the same number in subcontractors, 200,000 jobs, plus 400,000 jobs to attract industrial companies on the country because of the competitivity of energy. So it's altogether a very significant factor of industrial development and job creation. And last but not least, national independence in terms of energy that plays a significant role in any political aspect of the development of each and every country. These are the major drivers that nuclear energy represents for the countries. France, of course, which created a significant first platform since years, and all the countries that are developing nuclear in the world.
Thank you very much, Mr. Coglio. I'd now like to turn to Hungary, to Mr. Azudi.
Thank you very much. So you have to understand, in Hungary, nuclear plays a very important role. More than 1/3 of our electricity comes from nuclear energy, and we want to keep this share for the next decades until the end of this century. So we are now working on the replacement of old capacities with new units, and we think this is important because nuclear energy is safe, clean, and cost effective. This is the most important factor. So if we ask the people living in Hungary, they are motivated to use nuclear energy because it is safe, clean, and cheap source of electricity. The second factor is that nuclear is reliable. So we can rely on the base load nuclear energy, which is not the case for many other electricity sources. So it is maybe discussed in many times in the news, but even in Germany there is no sunshine in the night, and we need electricity during the nights as well. So I think the base load electricity source is a key element of the electricity system, and therefore we need nuclear energy for the long future. The third factor what I want to mention is development for a whole region. So construction and operation of a power plant is not only important only for a company or for a city, but it is the possibility for development for a whole region or even for a country. We think this project is key from that point of view as well. The fourth factor what I want to mention is the production of electricity inside the country with limited own resources. So we can import nuclear fuel, store for many years, and produce electricity inside the country, which gives much bigger security of supply. And the last factor is localization. So by the construction of these 2 new units on the Park side, we assume 40% localization, involvement of the Hungarian industry, which will create a lot of workplaces and really development for the whole country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Zasedanie. Thank you very much for your remarks. I now like to turn to Japan. Hattori-san, please.
Thank you, Agneta. To respond to your question, it's better to talk about Japanese energy policy. Japanese energy policy is to keep the S plus 3E. 3E means for the energy security and environment conservation and economically competitive with on the premise of safety. We call this as S plus 3E. This is coming from the uniqueness of the Japan situation. You know, Japan is a very small island country, physically isolated, and we have no indigenous energy resources. And also, we have no pipeline and transmission line connected with neighboring countries. This is very unique situation. Considering this situation, the energy security of supply is the first priority. The nuclear is a very important role in the energy mix in the future, and based on the viewpoint of the security of supply. That is a basic policy. Even though we experienced very disastrous Fukushima accident, we will overcome the current situation, and we will keep the nuclear technology for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hattori. And now I'd like to turn to U.S. and Mr. Pullman.
Thank you, Agneta, and may I first thank Mr. Kirienko and Rosanna for hosting this very, very impressive conference and for his opening remarks and, as always, impeccable hospitality, and to you, Agneta, for posing a sharp question and keeping us disciplined. I think everyone here knows that in the United States, where we have an operating fleet of about 100 reactors, we still get about 1/5 of all of our power from nuclear energy. And that accounts for over 60% of our carbon-free energy. So I will simply associate myself, without repeating the comments of my colleagues about the importance in that regard. I do think, especially having just heard from Hattori-san, it's important to note that the emphasis my colleagues have placed on safety is not only critical, but I think this panel represents one of the unique aspects of nuclear safety, which is the close international collaboration, without question. And I will recall very, very clearly the first hours after March 11th, 2011, when we were communicating, Mr. Kirienko and I were communicating with Mr. Bigot in France at the time, and all of us worked together and supported the IAEA, and all of us working together supported the incredibly important work of the World Association of Nuclear Operators, and only through that level of collaboration will we succeed. Now, to answer your question, the single aspect I'm selecting, in addition to these other factors, is the reliability. And yet you asked for a specific example, so here it is. Last year we had in the United States a polar vortex. Unexpected, deep, frigid cold penetrating deep into the United States, affecting power supplies in many, many states. Coal piles were freezing. Diesel generators had oil freezing in the pipes. Natural gas prices spiked. Propane gas prices spiked, sometimes 300%. So it was both an energy security and an economically burdensome time. Nuclear power saved the day. Availability remained 95% for nuclear power. That's something that you cannot get with all of the other forms of energy, all of which we do need. But the reliability of nuclear power is something that is always going to save us in providing important base load to keep us safe, warm, dry, and able to do our job. And yet, if I may close in tying it back to your remarks, that quality is not always recognized in deregulated markets. And we need to think through a way, and there are people in the United States, I may note, Chris Crane, the Nuclear Energy Institute, who are trying to make sure that we design our systems so that our independent systems operators can recognize the value that reliability brings to the grid, brings to electricity users all over the country. You can do it through capacity payments, you can do it through carbon credits, but somehow we need to find a way to capture the importance of reliability and to acknowledge and to reward it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Conlon. And you brought up very important tasks for the nuclear sector, for the nuclear industry, all of you, the values that nuclear bring, as well as the challenges we have ahead of us. And also, when we come together, we like to talk about the future. We like to talk about all our opportunities, our strengths, and our weaknesses, of course. And there are many organizations who are looking to where is nuclear energy going. There are, in recent years, we have forecasts on the development of nuclear energy, and they are based on different scenarios, and there are different numbers. And we have, for instance, if we look to some of the low scenarios, so very pessimistic scenarios, and some of the positive ones, there's more than 100 gigawatt of difference and in the total capacity. And of course, you also see that when it's low, it is because of the nuclear sector, the nuclear energy industry is very dependent on a lot of factors around us. And it's like financial stability, markets, deregulated markets, absence of serious incidents, and lots of other factors. And the task of several international organizations is to see to where are these projections going. And the World Nuclear Association are making a market report every second year where we look to how we see from a bottom-up perspective, from the industry, from the members, where is the projections for the future. I don't know if we have the possibility to see the projections on the screens, if there is a possibility to see that. Maybe not. Okay. And also we have projections from the IAEA, and there is also projections from the OECD, NEA. And when we look at the World Nuclear Association projections, our reference scenario is almost in line with the other scenarios if we look to the when things are going quite good. And now I'd like to ask Mr. Churakov to explain a little bit of the IAEA scenarios, please.
Thank you. Maybe you know that IAEA conduct every year projection of the global power generation capacity, nuclear power generating capacity every year up to the 2030. And We have the number for the last year, and we can see that nuclear power continues to grow by 2030. In spite of that, the spectrum of this projection is widespread. It's from 8% till 88%. Anyway, it shows that it's continued to grow. It's continued to grow. Why is the spectrum so wide? That because of the many inputs included there, and we knew a special methodology in order to make the correct projection. There are hundreds and maybe 1,000 inputs from every country and from the all areas of activity of the country. And that's why this is so widespread. But anyway, it showed that it's continued to grow. These figures have been declined a little bit since Fukushima, reflecting three main reasons: the continued impact on Fukushima Daiichi accident, the low price of natural gas and oil, that's what we can see now, and the increasing use of renewable energy. But anyway, the main idea is that Fukushima slowed growth, but not reversed it. So nuclear power is many countries for the future can see the nuclear power as a main input in their energy mix. Thanks.
Many thanks for that. Really great to see. And now I'd like to have also the comment from OECD NEA on your projections. You will get a microphone from the girl just behind you. And could you please comment also on your projections?
NEA and IEA, OECD, IEA, International Energy Agency, together we published the nuclear energy roadmap this year, and we projected like in 2010 we projected the nuclear energy will be about 1,200 gigawatts by 2050. But after Fukushima accident and the world energy crisis, it is reduced to expect 930 gigawatts, which occupies about 17% of the world energy, nuclear electricity energy. But this is still like 2.3 times of the current capacity. So it is really a formidable or challenge. The how to project is a little bit different from the other organization. OECD, NEA, and with the IAEA, we are targeting goal 2-degree scenario. We are targeting a goal to meet 2 degrees by 2050. Then our data is coming out of such goal. So it is a little bit different from searching from bottom to top, rather than this is a kind of top to bottom requirement to meet our 2-degree scenario. So it will be, if we don't have this kind of nuclear energy in the future, we will not meet our climate change goal. So this is a message from our study.
Thank you very much. That's extremely important to hear, that the demand for nuclear energy in the world, whatever we look at, however we look at it, the demand is growing. And as I also said in my opening remarks in the Atom Expo out there, is that the nuclear industry is really growing, but it's not growing fast enough, and that's what we'll hear now from you as well. It's not growing fast enough. I have one question that is for each one of the persons in the panel, as well as each one from the experts. But you will all get this question, and I will ask you later. So you can maybe write down in front of you. These are projections based on how the circumstances are, but where would you like to go? What should you think should be the target for the electricity share of the world nuclear, of the whole world electricity portfolio? How much nuclear should there be in the portfolio 2050? As we say, today it's 11%. Like 12 years ago, it was 17%. The NEA and IEA, it says it should be 18% to manage the climate change. So where should we be 2050? If you can vote, put it down in front of you. 11% as it is today, the share in the future. Should it be 18% as in the NEA? Should there be stronger ambitions from the nuclear sector? Should it be 25%? Should it be 33%? Or should it maybe in 2050 be that half the electricity comes from nuclear, 50%? I will ask you later which is your number, your favorite number, which will be the target for what we should work with. Now, I like to go forward here, and I have, based on all these projections and also maybe your wishes to the target for the nuclear energy in the future, that is really a tall order. It's a very big thing the nuclear sector has to do. We have to work together. Is it possible to perform this? And there's many circumstances around the nuclear energy and the nuclear industry. Is there a place for cooperation among the major vendors, for instance? Rosatom, having one of the largest portfolios in the world, offers its assistance. And now the question is for Mr. Nochren. To what extent is Areva open to such proposals for cooperation?
Thank you. Indeed, we are pretty much open, as we proved in the past. We have not only had partnerships with utilities, customers, such as EDF, developing now the evolution of the EPR, but also among vendors. I'm really deeply convinced that interdependency is key for our industry. So we have cooperation in reactors with MHI for ATMEA, MHI of Japan, but not only in the fuel cycle also. We have this technology partnership with Urenco on enrichment, and in the decommissioning with Mace and Atkins for Magnox Waste in UK. So competitors and partners are, I think, something of the future of the nuclear industry. As we are here in Moscow, I will also mention important partnerships with Mr. Kirienko's organization, with Rosatom, as we have been cooperating over recycling uranium for many years, and we provided a technology for defluorination in the Zelenogorsk plant. So really, we are open to this collaboration. An additional new aspect maybe of a recent evolution is that this cooperation among vendors has to be ready to be adapted to customers, whether they are new entrants or from a long history of nuclear. The needs are really diverse. There are different technical needs, supply chain needs, training needs. And we, as an industry, as partners and competitors, need to be in a position to elaborate a different solution for every country. And as an example, our INC solution has been delivered in 16 different countries with totally different designs, from our own reactors design to competitors' designs. So really this flexibility, this agility of the industry to adapt to customer needs finds a strong source in the collaboration between competitors indeed.
Thank you very much, Mr. Nochren. Thank you. Mr. Guido, a very short comment to that, please. Very short, yeah.
Va a ser muy breve. Evidentemente, la relación de costo-oportunidad para el avance de la construcción del sector nuclear va a estar íntimamente relacionado como energía de base que es con relación al precio del barril de petróleo. Nadie puede ignorar que el barril de petróleo a $60 es un valor político, como también lo fue cuando era $200 su valor. Evidentemente, la decisión de construir y de avanzar en el sector nuclear va a estar del lado de los dirigentes políticos de nuestros países. Y Argentina ha tomado la decisión particularmente de llevar su matriz al 25% para el año 2030, porque es una energía mucho más segura, depende mucho menos de los hidrocarburos fósiles que son no renovables y contamina solamente el 0,5% en materia de dióxido de carbono, que es lo que nos interesa a todos. Por eso creo que la decisión es eminentemente política de los líderes políticos, como hoy es evidentemente político el costo del barril de petróleo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vido. I'd like to go forward to Mr. Proglio. And when you were being in charge at EDF, you have advocated the extension of relations with Rosatom Enterprises. And now you are included in the board of directors of two companies building nuclear power plants in Turkey and in Finland, and according to the Russian technology. Does this mean that you may serve as a gatekeeper for French companies wishing to participate in these projects in one way or another? Mr. Proglio, please.
Well, this is not exactly the aim of the game. I have all my life worked to promote my country's industrial development and influence, and that will always be the driving force behind my personal and professional actions. France has a long-standing tradition of cooperation in the nuclear industry, in particular with both China and Russia. I personally have the highest regard for this company, which is Rosatom, and for Mr. Kirienko, who is one of the few leaders that has a genuinely long-term industrial vision. Concerning the functions that you mentioned, my role is to contribute my knowledge and experience to the success of these very important projects in Turkey and Finland, including keeping control of the costs, time limits, and even more, the relationships between the stakeholders, which are both politicians, civil society, and also industrial partners, all of which are more vital in our nuclear industry than in any other sector that I know.
Thank you very much, Mr. Proglio. I would now like to turn to Mr. Poneman. And this is a question because you're, of course, from US, and you were, in the beginning, one of the idea makers of the HEU agreement, and then moving on to be also minister to make the contracts for megatons to the megawatts. And now you're head of a company who has been executing this role and contract on behalf of the USA. What do you think, what role played in the mega project in the development of international cooperation? What role has this project done to increase the cooperation in the nuclear fuel cycle?
Thank you, Agneta. I would say in short that the megatons to megawatts deal transformed international cooperation in the nuclear fuel cycle. Why? Because it demonstrated a profound truth that is unique to the nuclear industry, and that is, it is possible to harness a national security imperative to a commercial driver out of the marketplace. That is of enormous importance, and when you consider the scale of what we achieved, over the course of 20 years, 500 metric tons of highly enriched uranium were blended down to commercial reactor fuel. 500 metric tons that had been part of the original Soviet arsenal. That's 20,000 weapons. That's 3 weapons a day dismantled for 20 years. And on our side, in the United States, I mentioned we get 1/5 of our power from nuclear energy. 1/2 of the nuclear fuel that supplied the American fleet for 20 years came from that deal. And so I would tell my American audiences, 1 in every 10 light bulbs in America was lit by material that used to be in the form of a warhead targeting American cities. Now that is a way where you can do good and do well. And I think that is a model that goes to your other questions of how sometimes commercial competitors can find ways to cooperate to the common benefit for our nuclear safety, for our personal security, and for our clean energy future.
Thank you, Mr. Poneman. I'm now having a question further to, it will be for Mr. Asudi and it will be for Mr. Joe. And this is after Fukushima. There was a common belief that there will be no new nuclear power plants built in Europe. However, currently we can see the opposite. We see Finland is building, France, United Kingdom and Hungary clearly adhere to the policy of continued use of nuclear energy and also expanded use. Besides, these plans also are supported by your general public, the population in these countries. So the question for Mr. Asudi and for Mr. Joe, what is the key motivation for your countries when it comes to developing nuclear power plants? How have you achieved such a high level of support for your plans among the population in Hungary and in the UK? More than 60% of those surveyed support the construction of new nuclear power plants. Mr. Asudi, please.
Thank you very much. So as I mentioned in the first round, one of the key advantages of nuclear is that it is safe, clean and cheap source of electricity, and it is well known by the public. So I think the cost of that electricity production is the key motivation for the public support. But there are other factors as well. So one of those other factors is that Hungary faces a very, very strange and very interesting problem. We import our electricity very much. So the import share increased in the last years more than 30%, so to the level of 30% and above, and it is not reliable and not sustainable. So we have to change something to push down the share of import, and we think because the nuclear is cheap, it will be able to compete with the import sources and push down the share of electricity import. Another issue is that our gas import is also very high, and importing gas is not always reliable. So it is much better to import nuclear fuel than to import natural gas on pipe. The next motivation for the public and for the government is that we are preparing for a regime when the CO2 emission will cost much more than nowadays. So the whole CO2 tax regime is not functioning very well now in Europe, and we think the price of CO2 will increase, and it will make fossil fuel power plants much more expensive, and therefore we will need the nuclear, and it is well known by the public. I have to mention also that we in Hungary have a continuous discussion with the population, and we try to inform not only the surrounding cities but the whole country about the importance of nuclear energy and our future plans. It is the new build project is in a preparation phase now. we just started the environmental licensing process. In the frame of that environmental licensing, we decided to visit 41 cities surrounding the site. And it was extremely important and interesting that we got a lot of questions from the citizens, and those questions were not directed to safety or economics of nuclear, but mainly the people living around the plant site are interested to get jobs from the project. So I think the new workplaces and the development of the whole society and the surrounding cities is a key motivation also in the public support. So we have to keep this discussion with the public, and I think we can maintain this high level of public support. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And also, I'd like to hear now from UK, because also UK is very interesting on these topics. Please, Mr. Yo.
Thank you. The UK, I think, shares many of the reasons that have just been described for Hungary for our support for nuclear. I think there's long been a good understanding of the science of climate change in the UK, and we were one of the countries urging a more challenging target for the whole of the EU to cut greenhouse gas emissions, resulting in the 40% target for 2030. We believe in the UK we can only achieve our domestic targets for cutting greenhouse gas emissions by greatly reducing the emissions from the electricity generation industry. And that's the core reason for our support for nuclear. There is a secondary concern, but it's much less in the UK, about security of supply, that compared to the last century, the UK is now a very heavy importer of gas, and that's not a situation with which we are entirely comfortable. I think as far as the post-Fukushima scene, that really reflects the public's trust in the UK regulator, which is seen as independent, competent. And after Fukushima, the Chief Inspector wrote a very strong report which convinced the British public that the circumstances which led to the accident in Fukushima could not happen in the UK, and so the public was reassured. It's also the case that people's experience of nuclear power in the UK is very good. It is seen as safe, clean, reliable, a provider of very good jobs. And the closer that people live to a nuclear power station in the UK, the more likely they are to be a supporter of investment in new nuclear power stations. That's a very fortunate background for investment. I do believe the one challenge that the industry faces in the UK is about price, and that we do need to find a way of reflecting the advantages of nuclear in terms of reliability, as mentioned earlier on. That is an advantage which is not shared by intermittent renewables, and yet we haven't yet found a way, even through the capacity market, of accurately reflecting that. I also believe, as Hungary does, that we will see the carbon price in one form or another rise very substantially in the next 10 years. It's another reason why those countries which are early investors in low carbon electricity are likely to have a competitive advantage and not a burden from their decision.
Thank you very much. And we also have among our experts a representative of another European government, and this is the Czech Republic, and which held a tender for the expansion of the Temelin nuclear power plant, but then was forced to terminate it on financial grounds, as far as we know. The question from Mr. Sok, do you plan to reopen the tender, to hold it in a different format, or have you postponed this issue for the long term? Please.
Thank you. First of all, our government 2 weeks ago approved the new energy policy, The last energy policy was from 2004. There was a lot of changes with the climate combat and so on. According to that strategy, we have to build at least 3 new nuclear units before 2040 in order to be able to decarbonize our economy and to replace the role of lignite in our energy mix. So definitely we will start immediately the preparatory process, the permit granting process in 2 existing nuclear sites, Dukovany and Temelin. This week on Wednesday, the government will discuss the detailed national action plan for nuclear. It deals not only with details of building new plants, but also the issues of governance at the government level of this process, the issues of waste management, fuel supply, diversification, and a lot of the areas. So definitely, we will in the very near future start the preparation of building new nuclear units.
Thank you very much for this good news. Now I'd like to address these questions to Mr. Rotterman, who is representing the Federal Union of Energy-Intensive Industry in Germany. So we have, in fact, also a good customer here in the room who probably uses up a lot of electricity. After 4 years, what is your attitude towards the government decision in your country to sort of cut back in the use of nuclear power?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yes, I'm representing the 6 most energy-intensive branches in Germany, representing 120 terawatt hours of electricity, 180 terawatt hours of gas. It's really a big portion of energy we are consuming, and of course we are affected with every energy policy we see in Germany or in Europe. And yes, we have a policy in Germany which is with the objective to decarbonize the economy in Germany, and especially the energy production in Germany. And we started with the energy concept in 2010 to increase our renewable energy dramatically within the next decades. But in 2010 we still stick with the decision to use nuclear power as transition energy until 2040. And then with Fukushima, and in Fukushima we decided to phase out nuclear energy until 2022. This has, of course, a lot of consequences concerning the costs in Germany for energy, and also the security of supply for the highly energy-intensive consumers. Concerning the costs, they are, of course, more determined by the high increase of renewable energy in Germany. In the meantime, we have to pay roughly 23 billion euro as subsidies only for the renewable energy, which is a really high amount. It's paid by the consumers, especially also by the industrial consumers, although there were some special regulations for the energy-intensive consumers. The industry and the business is still paying roughly 9 billion euro for additional costs for renewable energy. Concerning the security of supply, it becomes more and more difficult to stabilize the grid in Germany, of course, because of the high amount of renewable energy. In the meantime, we increased our share of renewables during the last 5-6 years by 100%. Yeah? 5 years ago we still had roughly 40% of renewable energy share. Now we have 26%, which has a lot of influence on the stability of the grid. And by phasing out further nuclear energy until 2022, the difficulty to will increase, of course, and therefore we need another energy system also in Germany. We are discussing the capacity mechanism, all these things to build new capacities for fossil-based power. But this is, of course, another problem with our climate change goal. We have a German objective of 40% until 2020 and 50% until 2030. And this is, of course, a problem with our lignite and coal-fired power plants, which are still running and emitting. But at the end of the day, we are although we have a energy policy which is phasing out nuclear energy, concerning the European energy policy and concerning the objective to increase the internal or to improve the internal European market. At the end of the day, we will not be nuclear power free in Germany, because by connecting our energy consumption with other countries in Europe, we will of course also use nuclear power from other countries.
Thank you very much. It's very good to get this insight from Germany and how Germany is in fact connected to the rest of the world around. I'd like to again to go to Argentina. There is countries traditionally using nuclear power, and like Argentina, but you as a country develop your industry in your own way, and you're expanding the Atucha nuclear power plant. And authorities decided to deploy multiple blocks of various designs at the same site. And so you now have these several technologies on a single site. Does this mean that Atucha site has become sort of an incubator for testing different technologies so that they can then be sort of replicated or duplicated in other venues in the vast country of Argentina? Mr. Vido, please.
Sí, efectivamente, en realidad todas las plantas que hemos construido las hemos construido como arquitectos y constructores a través de cesión de tecnología, tanto sea de Siemens Alemania en el caso de Atucha 1, como en el caso de Embalse con la empresa canadiense, que como ustedes saben en este momento está en proceso de alargamiento de vida. Quería hacer un comentario también que venía en relación a mi intervención anterior. El alargamiento de vida de la central Embalse se logra financiar a través de un crédito de la Corporación Andina de Fomento, que es un organismo multilateral. Creo que hay que tomar a las potencialidades financieras de los organismos multilaterales para poder financiar, sobre todo en las economías emergentes, el desarrollo de la actividad nuclear desde el punto de vista de energía, porque genera un proceso de autonomía y de autarquía y de soberanía en cada uno de los países que llevan adelante estos procesos tecnológicos, sobre todo cuando se hacen en el marco de transferencia de tecnología. En este momento estamos trabajando en 3 bloques, o sea, 3 nuevas centrales. Una de agua pesada, que sería la 4ª central nuclear en la Argentina, de 740 megavatios. Estamos trabajando con la empresa CNNC China, con tecnología también canadiense y aporte argentino, en una relación de 70% de participación de capital e industria argentina y 30% de tecnología china. Y en el caso de Rosatom estamos también estudiando la posibilidad de la construcción de un PWR, también estamos discutiendo en este momento los términos de la
Thank you very much. I'd now like to turn to Arno, to Mr. Regaldo, and just for a short comment, if you could, on how has the practice of operating nuclear power plants changed since after Fukushima? Of course, that's the very biggest question ever, and you could give the very biggest answer. But if you just would say short, what is the main things that have happened, please?
Thank you. So 4 years ago, the Fukushima accident and its consequences reminded us how sensitive our industry could be to any major event, wherever this event happens. And it dramatically changed some of our practices for the benefit of all. The first answers were given by the operators themselves. Every power plant in the world conducted post-Fukushima safety assessments. And following these evaluations, investments, sometimes huge investments, were decided to fill the gaps and increase the safety level of their installations. In the same time, all the operators decided to strengthen day-to-day practices, safety culture of their staff, emergency response procedures, and so on. But a second level of answer was given by the community of the operators themselves, because they decided, through the organization of WANO, the World Association of Nuclear Operators, to almost double the resources dedicated to the organization in order to strengthen its programs and to have a much more challenging self-evaluation of all the operators. Thus, we increased the number of peer reviews, safety evaluations made by other operators to every power plant to a 4 years frequency. Every power plant in the world is receiving a safety evaluation peer review by other operators now every 4 years. We decided also to conduct systematic corporate peer reviews of the companies themselves in order to verify the safety culture alignment of the whole companies and operators. We also decided to carry out systematic pre-start reviews for all the new projects. So in a way, after Fukushima, the operators decided to impulse WANO as becoming more and more an internal safety regulator. You know, when we speak about nuclear safety, we used to speak about barriers, successive barriers. In a way, the operators are the first barrier. WANO and the International Organization of the Operators is the second barrier, challenging and assessing all the power plants. And after, of course, we have the national safety regulators and international companies, organizations trying to check from the external point of view the safety of all the power plants. And I think it is in order to still improve nuclear safety.
Thank you very much, Mr. Riallo, for that very good comments and remarks. I have a question for Japan now. It's for Satori-san. Of course, it's the shortest question possible as well. And I've been to Japan several times. I've seen some of your safety upgrades, and of course there'll be many changes. I'm not going to ask about that. We just want to know, do you think that there will be several Japanese nuclear power plants that will be relaunched this year? And how many?
It's very difficult to directly answer to your question. And it's true that Japan's current for the movement is very slow, but that is coming from the two factors. One is the public opinion, the other is the regulatory process. The first, public opinion, I carefully monitoring these for the public opinion poll in these 2 years. Based on that result, about 60% people still against for restarting. That is a very big impact to the whole decision making. And for the regulatory process, after accident happened for the new regulation was decided in July 2012, and new regulatory body established September 2012, and the new regulation was decided July 2013. Since that time, the utility companies submit assessment report, and since that time, all the nuclear power plants, 43 units, the total capacity is 42 gigawatts, is shut down in these 2 years. And during that time, Japan is depends 90% for the thermal power. That is a very big impact to the Japanese economy, not only the household, but the industry. But still, Japanese public opinion is very severe about nuclear. And so, how to rebuild the public confidence is the most important issue. And so, I can say this now is out of the 43 units, 4 units got approval from the regulatory body, but still it takes another 2 or 3 months for the study. And so I cannot say how many units, by when, and by how many, I cannot say. That is my question, my answer. Thank you.
Thank you for this answer very much, Rosa. And of course, it would be nice to have a guest from you, but maybe we can do that in a smaller room. Okay, I'd like now to turn to several countries. It will be Turkey, Indonesia, Jordan, and Nigeria. And I have a question, the second question for you all, and that is, as you're representing these countries, which have just started on a path of the peaceful use of nuclear energy, I would like to ask these questions to Mr. Yamak and Mr. Visnubroto, Mr. Arai, and Mr. Osai. What benefits, besides producing the power, can you see for your countries when you're building and operating nuclear power, the first reactor? Could Mr. Yamak start, please?
Thank you very much. As you know, that Turkey started nuclear journey in 1950s. Since then, within 50 years, Turkish universities trained lots of nuclear engineers. Only 2 universities trained more than 800 Turkish nuclear engineers. What are they doing is, some of them are working in abroad, some of them are working in private sector in Turkey. We were able to start first nuclear power plant project in 2010 by signing intergovernmental agreement with Russian Federation, and we signed second MPP project with the Japanese. With those projects, we will be able to develop our own human resource capacity, and also I believe that there will be some opportunities for Turkish nuclear industry. Some of the Turkish companies are already having Russian certification. Some of them are already having ATMI standardization. And this project is basically the electricity project for Turkey. But moreover, there will be some other opportunities. For example, creation of new jobs, and also the training the Turkish nuclear engineers in abroad. For example, we sent more than 240 Turkish students to Russia. They are already getting trained in Russian University and Moscow State University. This year we will be able to send another 80 students to Russia. Some of them will be getting trained in St. Petersburg State University. So all in all, this is the project for electricity. Moreover, there will be some other opportunities, for example, job creation and training human resources.
Thank you very much, and we are wishing you good luck now with getting all this energy back into these new constructions. I'd like to turn to Indonesia. Mr. Visnubroto, what would be your answer to the same question? What would be the benefits for your country?
Okay, thank you. Well, Indonesia doesn't have the nuclear power plant, but we are a big country with population more than 240 million people. The challenge for us is the public acceptance. Of course, we have a program on the promotion, and every year we conduct public survey. Surprisingly, that last year when we conduct public survey, 72% of the public support the operation of nuclear power plant. It's very surprised us. But anyway, we still wait for the decision by the government. When we promote the nuclear power plant or nuclear energy in our country, we talk about not only the benefits of the new electricity, but also on the government program to reduce the carbon emission. because the government already committed to reduce in 2020 26% reduce of the carbon emission, and others is about to develop the infrastructure in some area in our country. As you know that we are island country, and when we talk with the local government, they said we need the electricity from the nuclear, and they said that it will develop our infrastructure, not only on the electricity, but we develop the industry also, we develop the level of the education of the people. This is the benefits of the development of nuclear energy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bismukotis. You really see nuclear energy as being a growth engine for your industry and for your country. Thank you very much. And now I'd like to turn to Jordan, to Mr. Arai. Could you please also answer the same question?
Yeah, thank you. First, let me thank you for the sun tan and for vitamin D over these 2 hours, Mr. Director. This is something that nuclear energy cannot provide, actually, but can do it artificially. But anyway, in terms of Jordan, Jordan is a poor resource, poor country, and energy dependence being for 97% dependency. So surely security of supply is the prime consideration for Jordan. And surely we do definitely look for the nuclear investment as an investment in the future. So surely we think for Jordan, we would like definitely to develop nuclear energy for sustainable development. So sustainable development is a key feature for the nuclear energy. And definitely, as my colleagues, definitely we think of creating high-level manpower development in the country and spin-off industries, so we definitely can enable a lot of the mega projects in the country. I mean, Jordan is less industrialized than our colleagues and neighbors, but definitely we would like to develop a chart depending on the high-level manpower development in the country. But I think let's go back to Mr. Kirienko and this interdependence. It's a very important feature for Jordan. And after Fukushima, we have a lot of resistance for nuclear. And I think, it's very important that and also for climate change, that you need a very sustainable energy in terms of safety, prime importance for safety reliability. In that sense, I would look very forward for perhaps some of the speakers can address these issues of this kind of partnership between the vendors. I think really the solution for nuclear definitely will be the future is nuclear, whether it's improved fission or fusion, but I think important to focus on few technologies that can be deployed in the thousands in the world to combat global change. Because I believe that for us, we're aiming for 50% in 2050, to answer your question. And definitely safety is to be paramount. You have to have, I think the IA should have higher teeth in terms of the oversight for the safety programs of the countries. As WANO, perhaps this has to be more transparent for the countries. And I think this is the only way to go. We cannot really undercut safety and have more transparency in kind of safety and regulation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Arai. And now I would like to turn over to Nigeria as well. And Mr. Osaisai, can you maybe run over with the microphone? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. I will start by giving the background information of Nigeria. Nigeria is a small country in terms of area, but very dense in population, with 170 million persons. There are quite a number of fossil resources, but like other speakers have stated, the concept of sustainable development is quite paramount, which means that current generations should think of future generations in the exploitation and utilization of the available resources. The fossil fuels we have in our country are finite, and they could be finished within some short period of time. Therefore, the element of the country's policy wanting to introduce nuclear power is to ensure that there is a diversified basket of energy options, and nuclear could play a key role in this. In doing that, we also take in cognizance of the fact that the current resources that we get from other resources like oil and gas can be plowed back into developing other energies, including nuclear. And in so doing, you can have some element of energy self-sufficiency within some period of time. Another key element that I think I would want to bring in, when a country tries to implement a nuclear power program, it comes with quite some serious demand on its industrial capacity. Nigeria is a developing country, and if we must participate in implementing a nuclear power program, that comes with the element of upping the production systems in the country, the standards. For instance, being able to ensure that all manner of local participation by way of cement or iron and steel would have to conform to a particular grade, nuclear grade. I think that brings some element of drive in the country to ensure that we're able to develop the energy sector, and at the same time, there is a spin-off in being able to develop other industrial activities. Another key element, which is a spin-off of implementing the nuclear power program, is the training of personnel. Training personnel for implementing a nuclear power program is quite intensive. And in so doing, you're also training a wide array of other professionals who could also be involved in a number of other sectors. Like you rightly mentioned, in addition to nuclear power, they could be involved in the health sector, in the environmental management, and so on and so forth. So I think one other key element that we think we would be able to reap from the implementation of a nuclear power program is being able to train specialized corps of scientists and engineers who could also be very useful in other sectors of developing our economy. And I think that brings in the whole essence of being able to be a momentum and impulse for the socio-economic development of Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Osofai. Before going to the two last questions, I will just go quickly now through the panel and the expert. You're allowed to give them your vote. What should be the target of the nuclear industry? What should be the share of nuclear energy in the electricity supply 2050? You can choose between 11, 18, 25, 33 or 50%. I start with Ms. Asuru. From the back end, yes, please. But very quickly, just no comments why, just give me your number.
40%.
40, okay, that was not on the target. And Mr. Prodio?
30%.
30. And what about Mr. Poneman? You're not voting?
I think we should let markets work. What MIT says, 18% would preserve our ability to change the climate.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Hattori-san.
Maybe between the 15 to 20 or the 20, yes.
Okay, thank you. And what's next? What is your personal view, not the IAEA view, Mr. Chodakov?
In spite of we giving up to 88, I'm personally thinking about 15, 20.
Okay.
Let's say 18.
Okay, you're going for 18. Thank you. And what is Mr. Rigaldo saying here? It's a personal vote.
Around 20% if we have a safe operation.
Okay, good. Thank you. You don't need to make comments, but it's okay. And what about Mr. Knocker?
50% for obvious reasons, and an aggressive one.
Okay, thank you. And what is Mr. Vito saying?
Yo me refería a Argentina 25, pero creo que 20% es muy razonable a nivel global.
25. 25. 25. Yes, 25. Thank you. The translation was not fast enough. Mr. Kirienko. 30. And quickly from the panel, who would like to start here? Mr. Jones?
40% if we get the carbon price right, then markets will drive it to that level.
Okay. Mr. Arai, quickly.
50%.
50.
25.
25.
20.
20. Next, you go over to the other side, please. To start with Mr. Hart.
25 before Fukushima projection.
25 and
18.
18. Okay.
50% in Czech, 20% globally.
Okay. That's also possible to have that.
20.
Thank you.
Global industrial capacity is a limitation, so I don't see it going beyond 20.
Okay. 2020. Thank you very much. Thank you for that vote. And you see that there's very many options here. So we need to, but anyway, for each one of those we have to work hard. There's none of those that are easy, whatever which one we go for. Now I have going to one of the last questions. For the market, it's important to secure also not only the use of proven technologies, but also the development of new products. And I have a question for Mr. Behar and Mr. Kirienko. Could you please share your views on how you see the technological future of nuclear energy? Please, Mr. Behar, can you start?
Okay, thank you, Agneta. I would like to talk to the subject, of course, nuclear reactors and fuel cycle. It is clear that during this century, the future of nuclear reactor will be linked to light water reactor and fast neutron reactor. But I think that at the end of the day, at the end of this century, light water reactor will produce the biggest quantity of electricity. For light water reactor, we need to keep and to increase, if possible, the level of safety, as was said this morning. The performance is possible, and we need to work on the aging of reactor. For fast neutron reactor, just a few words to say why this technology, because this technology is the only one which is able to burn every type of plutonium, not use, if possible, any more natural uranium, and last but not least, strongly help to the management of high-level nuclear waste through, for example, transmutation of minor actinides. We decided to work on fast neutron reactor in 2008 in France, and we have actually two projects in parallel. One is what we call Russian-French fast reactor, which is a cooperation with Rosatom, and another one which is only a national project, which name is ASTRID, which stands for Advanced Sodium Technological Reactor of Industrial Demonstration. We are now using about 600 people on 1 billion euros of budget for the engineering design. Of course, the overview is not finished if you don't talk about fuel cycle. It is clear for us that fuel cycle is necessary, and more especially closed fuel cycle is necessary for the development of sustainable nuclear energy. We took this option in France many years ago, and independently of the different governments, it is still the way we are pursuing. As you know, we have two main facilities in La Hague for reprocessing and in Marcoule for which is a MOX 10 fabrication, which are very good facilities. We just need to do the following thing to adapt them to new coming fuel and for fast neutron reactors fuel later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dahan. General Director, Kirienko, please.
Спасибо. Я бы поддержал и продолжил то, о чем сказал господин Виар. Нам кажется, что в новом поколении технологий ключевой вопрос – это даже не реакторная технология, это технология замыкания топливного цикла. Во многом имеющаяся сегодня технология легководных реакторов отвечает требованиям рынка, потребностям заказчиков, но вот важнейший вопрос – это обеспечение топливного цикла с приходом к равновесному состоянию, когда мы можем, захоранивая отходы, положить в землю не большее количество радиоактивности, чем мы взяли из нее, добывая природный уран. При этом нам нужно так построить технологию, я об этом сказал, чтобы постараться включить в эту технологию утилизацию уже накопленных отходов, в том числе и плутония, который создавался для оружейных целей, являлся побочным продуктом переработки отработанного топлива гражданских атомных реакторов. Поэтому, на наш взгляд, ответы на эти вопросы дает уже технология быстрых реакторов. Мы двигаемся в этом направлении. Это действительно и совместные проекты российско-французские, о которых мы говорили. У нас успешно работает уже несколько десятков лет быстрый натриевый реактор БН-600. В прошлом году состоялся физический пуск, в этом году энергопуск реактора БН-800. Ну и, конечно, важнейшие сейчас движения – это работа по созданию нового типа топлива с технологией его переработки. Для нас предмет такой гордости то, что мы в гораздо более короткие сроки, чем предполагали ранее, смогли выйти на создание и переход к опытной отработке нового плотного урано-плутониевого нитридного топлива как элемент этого замыкания топливного цикла. По предварительным оценкам экспертов оценивалось, что на это потребуется от 8-10 лет. Но вот за 3 года, в 2011 году мы стартовали с этой работой, уже в 2014 году первые 6 сборок плотного урано-плутониевого топлива поставлены на реакторные испытания в реактор БН-600, и испытания идут успешно. Это позволяет нам говорить о том, что можно существенно сократить выход на коммерциализацию технологий. Вот у меня 2 итоговых вывода по вопросу, который вы подняли. Первый вывод: убеждены абсолютно, что вот этот вопрос взаимозависимости и взаимопроникновения имеет прямое отношение к созданию новых технологий. Это тоже должен быть вопрос, в котором сотрудничество должно начинаться не тогда, когда технология создана, а именно сейчас, в процессе создания этой технологии. Мы абсолютно открыты совместному партнерству и приглашаем наших коллег к этой работе. Второй важнейший вывод заключается в том, что мы считаем, что с учетом успешного получения нового поколения топлива, с учетом всего накопленного опыта по быстрым реакторам, у нас вопрос коммерциализации технологий быстрых реакторов с замыканием топливного цикла из разряда научных гипотез и обсуждений на научно-технических советах переходит в практическую коммерческую плоскость. Мы исходим из того, что к 2025 году мы будем иметь коммерческую технологию, которую сможем предлагать и реализовывать вместе с нашими партнерами. И вот именно поэтому я позволил себе на ваш предыдущий вопрос назвать 30% долю атомной энергетики. Я сам считаю, что только с легководными реакторами скорее мы остановимся на уровне 20% именно из-за нерешенности вопроса замыкания топливного цикла. С переходом к новому поколению технологий, поскольку мы ставили горизонт в середину века, убежден, что 30% может быть минимальной границей, на которой с этим поколением технологий мы можем идти. Спасибо.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kirienko. I have now to say that I have planned a 10-minute closure remarks, and but you're lucky today. I will reduce them to only like 1 minute, something like that. Today we have had this extraordinary session, this forum with panelists and experts from around the world, from industry and from governments, and we have explored the different benefits of nuclear, the values that nuclear bring, but also some of the challenges for the future. And indeed, we were not able to come to one joint target of where we are going, but maybe over time we can find this harmony, because we know that we cannot achieve anything unless we are having a very good collaboration. The nuclear industry all over the world is very globalized. We are in all countries. We have all types of partnerships. And also governments wanting to have nuclear in place also should look at the same direction. So if we move together, we will achieve a lot. And I'd like to thank Rosatom for this fantastic putting together this forum, the plenary session, and I'd like all of you to join me in thanking the experts and panelists for all their good comments, and also for keeping on time, so we can close on time. And you know, this is probably the hardest. We have these very strong guys, very good experiences and knowledge, and to be very short is the hardest thing in life, and they have achieved it, and they have given us so very good comments. So a big round of applause for everybody. Thank you.